Are you ready to vibe? You're listening to Creepy Vibes Only.
Okay, cool.
Are we ready?
We're ready. Lewis and I are prepared.
Perfect. So, like I said before, you rudely interrupted me.
Listen.
I'm going to read an excerpt of the story, the research. So it goes as, the next night was my breaking point. Around midnight, I woke up to see a truly horrifying sight. I was staring face to face with a creature with a black hoodie, a dark blue mask with no nose or mouth staring down at me. The thing that scared me the most was that it had no eyes, just empty black sockets. I grabbed the camera from the nearby mantle and took a picture. Immediately after taking the shot, the creature lunged at me and tried to claw open my chest to get to my lungs. I stopped it by kicking it in the face. As I ran out of my room, I grabbed my wallet. I would need the money. I ran out of my brother's house into the night. I eventually ended up in the woods near Edwin's house and tripped on a rock. I fell unconscious and woke up in the hospital. So,
Jesus.
This is a story of Eyeless Jack, also known as EJ, Jack, or the Creature. EJ
Jesus.
is a stalker and serial killer who breaks into a person's home to steal things, specifically their organs. And of course, this is a creepypasta.
Nice. I hope so.
So for those that don't know what a creepypasta is, these are horror legends that have basically been copied and pasted all over the internet. And Eyeless Jack is one of the most popular mainstream creepypastas there is out there. So I will go through the actual story. And yeah, so when I was telling Emma about I was doing the story, I was reading it and it's super, super interesting. And like the same night, Milo at like 3 a.m. woke up and was like growling at the hallway. So I regretted my choices after that. So this is the story of Eyeless Jack. After his house forecloses, Mitch, who is the protagonist, moves in with his brother Edwin. A week after moving in, he hears a loud rustling sound outside of his window. But Mitch doesn't pay much attention to it, and he thinks it's just a raccoon or something, and goes back to bed. The following morning, he mentions the rustling to Edwin, who agrees with him that it must have been a raccoon or a squirrel or something. So the next night, Mitch again hears the rustling outside of his window, but this time around, his window opens and there's a loud thump. So he jumps up in his bed, turns on the light, but can't see anything. So he just assumed that he was sleeping and he imagined it. Following morning, when he leaves his bedroom, his brother Edwin just stares at him with a look of horror and shock. Mitch has a large gash under his left eye socket. So Edwin rushes Mitch to the hospital to get it checked out. The doctors think Mitch hurt himself while he was sleeping, and don't think much of the eye gash, but there's one thing that keeps them completely shocked. It seems that overnight, Mitch has lost his left kidney.
What the fuck?
Upon checking him out, the doctors saw a clean incision with sutures, and when they further examined it, noticed that the kidney was gone. There's no medical concern, so there's no the way the kidney was removed and he was closed back up. It was done flawlessly. Like he had been in a hospital and it was a normal procedure. After checking him out completely, there's no medical concern to keep him at the hospital. So they told Mitch that he could go home. But this is where the story escalates. Mitch
I'm
is
sorry,
again.
it escalates after his fucking kidney is stolen? That wasn't the peak?
Nope. There's
Okay,
more.
good. Great. Love that for us.
Mitch is attacked again by Eyeless Jack. He saw EJ, and he decided to fight back. So this is where that excerpt, I will repeat it again. So around midnight, Mitch woke up to a truly horrifying sight. He was staring face to face with a creature with a black hoodie, dark blue mask with no nose or mouth staring down at him. The thing that scared Mitch the most was that it had no eyes, just empty black sockets. So he grabbed a camera, took a picture, but then at that point, EJ lunged at him and tried to claw open his chest to get to his lungs this time.
Yeah, what the fuck? Why would you be like, 1 second, attacker, I need to capture you on film? Like, why would your priority be like, oh, maybe I need to get something to defend myself, not like my fucking Polaroid?
No, he wants to document it.
Oh my god.
So he was able.
Sorry. Oh my god.
So Mitch was able to get EJ off of him by kicking EJ in the face. And then he ran out of the house, grabbed his wallet on the way out, and ran straight into the woods near Edwin's house, where he tripped on a rock and fell unconscious, where he woke up in the hospital.
Also, listeners, don't run to a forest. That's not smart. Run to other people who can help you. Don't run to a forest, please.
I like how wounded up you're being about this.
Oh, I know it's not real, but like,
it's so good.
It's like in a horror movie when they just like make terrible choices, and you're like, don't do that, but don't, and they just get. Oh my god. Okay, sorry.
So good news, Mitch isn't hurt. Bad news, Edwin is dead. So Mitch's parents bring him back to the house to collect his things, where he finds Edwin's corpse. When he finds his brother's corpse, the thing is, finding his brother's corpse was not the creepiest thing that he found in that house. Next to the corpse, there is Mitch's stolen kidney covered in a black substance with a bite taken out of it. And that is the story of Eyeless Jack.
What the fuck?
So, Eyeless Jack is a non-canon.
Non-canon?
Not canon, yes, sorry.
Okay.
So the creator La Mishi Mishi, who also created Sally Williams, Come Play With Me, they have been attributed to have created the original story of Eyeless Jack. So this isn't what I just read from, is a non-canon from Eyeless Jack. The original story is about Jack Nichols. Jack Nichols is a college student who befriends the wrong people. So Jack becomes friends with a peer named Jenny and a small group of her friends. However, when it's really too late, Jack discovers that the friends and Jenny are actually a part of a demon-worshipping cult. And by the time that he figures it out, he ends up being sacrificed to the demon that they revere. The cult members, they kill Jack by pouring tar into his eyes, thus blinding him and killing him. Then Jack's corpse is possessed, and in turn, he murders Jenny and the rest of the cult members by slashing their throats and disemboweling them. Jack then takes their kidneys. So this is how Eyeless Jack came to be.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. It's gross.
So like the thing killed his brother and was like, 1 sec, I need to have a quick snack. And not myself when I haven't eaten, like the Snickers commercial.
So, for what I think, he like still had the kidney with him when he tried to kill Mitch. And when Mitch ran away, he's like, fine, I'll just take a snack out of your old kidney, and I'll just go kill your brother.
Yeah, also, why didn't he like warn his like wait, why didn't his brother hear this going on in the room? I wonder. Also, like, I don't know, like I would try to warn my housemate /sibling /whoever.
It's like everyone for themselves. You got something trying to get to your lungs, fucking go.
Okay, Ryan, if I'm staying with you guys and a fucking demon's after me, I will warn you. We'll get Maya out of the house. We'll figure it out. I will not run away without saying something. Like, could you imagine, like, you're staying with Jovi and you're like, good luck? Like, no.
I would scream, but I wouldn't, like, stop and wait.
But at least you'd be like, hey, by the way, there's something in the fucking house trying to kill us.
I would scream it. I wouldn't check to make sure they heard it.
You wouldn't go help her?
Well, not if it's coming after me. I'm running.
Oh my god.
I gotta go.
Stephanie, if the zombies rise, I'm not bringing you with me. You're on your own. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Fuck. His poor brother, abandoned to die.
Yeah, well, should have woken up. Should have taken whatever. How do you call them? Those like pills.
Oh my god.
Well, that was my creepy story.
Yeah, it triggered me apparently.
Yeah, I saw it. It's very nice.
Big reaction. Jesus. Okay. Great. My story is not a creepypasta. I've been having some like reticence to touch the Son of Sam because like there are still survivors of that who are alive today.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to sate my true crime interest, I'm going to talk to you guys about the Villisca Axe Murder House because
our first true crime story.
First time true crime.
Yay!
That's not the right tone. So this murder happened in the town of Villisca, Iowa, back in like the early 1900s. So to give some context about the setting of this, I want to talk to you guys about the town itself first. Shout out to villiscaiowa.com, which seems to be like very centric around this crime, which remains unsolved to this day.
Okay.
Because I've basically gotten all the information. Well, I have quite literally gotten all the information from this story on this from this website. So back in the early 1900s, Villisca, it's like in the Midwest, United States, if you're not familiar with the United States. It was a relatively, like back for that time, like it was a big enough town. Like there are around 2,500 residents. It was described as flourishing. Businesses were doing well. Like there was a busy several main streets. Trains went through all the time, all day, every day. And Villisca is supposed to mean pretty place or pleasant view. So like a very like idyllic small town, like think like whatever that town is in the Gilmore Girls. I should know this. I watched that series. Anyways, think that, but 1912. Okay. 1 sec, I have to sneeze.
Oh. Cute elevator music.
Yeah, honestly. Okay, yeah. So in 1912, the town built the only publicly funded armory in the entire state. So that brought in a lot of businesses and wealth, and the town is like really doing well. Unfortunately, though, all of these like really positive things and all of this success became overshadowed by the events that took place on June 10th, 1912.
Okay.
Because on this date, 8 horrific murders took place. The Moore family and 2 overnight guests were found in their beds. And this is a direct quote from the website. Little known to its residents, that was the possibility that their town was named not after a pretty place, but for the Indian word Villisca, which means evil spirit. Again, let me know if I mispronounced that. And it should be a native or indigenous word. It's just what the website says itself. As mentioned, the murders have never been solved. And this is what the town is most known for. So before I talk about the actual crime itself, let's talk a little bit about the people who were murdered. So Josiah B. Moore was the patriarch of the family. He was a very successful businessman, and he was married to Sarah Montgomery, and they had 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul. Josiah had lived in Villisca for 13 years and worked at the Jones store for 9 of those years. He was very well known in the town. He was like one of the most successful people in the town. So his death would have had like a marked impact on the other people there. His wife, Sarah, was born in Knox County in 1873 in Illinois and moved to Iowa with her parents, Mr. and Mrs. John Montgomery, and her sister Mary in about 1894. When she died, she was 39 years old and was like an active member of the Presbyterian Church. And she actually led the Children's Day exercises the day before her death, which was June 9th. One of the suspects was actually her brother-in-law. So that's a potential. And there was like a lot of bad blood between them, which made him a suspect, but he was eventually cleared. The other victims include their children. Herman, who was the eldest of the children, was 11 at the time of his death. It was said that he was often like by his dad's side, and he was like very much a daddy's boy, so he was really close to his dad. His little sister Catherine was 10 when she died, and her 2 friends who were also unfortunately murdered were Lena and Ina, and stayed the night, which is why they died as well. And then Boyd and Paul were the youngest of the siblings. They were 7 and 5. And unfortunately, the Stillinger sisters, Lena and Ina May, were the daughters of Joseph and Sarah Stillinger. Lena was 12 when she died. And she was actually the only victim who apparently tried to fight off the attacker. Yeah. And then Ina May was the other murdered victim. Okay, so basically, here's what happened. I'm going to read kind of paraphrased from the website itself. Mm-hmm. So this kind of starts on June 9th and goes until the murder of the family and their friends on the 10th of June, 1912. So on the 9th, Lena and Ina Stillinger left their home for church early that Sunday morning. They had planned on having dinner with their grandma after the morning service, spending afternoon with her, and then going home to spend the night after the Children's Day exercises included, which I guess are like something the church would have put on. Mm-hmm. However, they were instead invited by Catherine Moore to spend the night at the Moore home instead. So before they left for the exercises, Mr. Moore, so the father who was killed, placed a call to the Stillinger home to ask permission for the girls to stay overnight. Their older sister Blanche told Mr. Moore that her parents were both outdoors, but she would pass the message along to them. So the Children's Day program at the Presbyterian Church was an annual event, and it started at about 8 p.m. on the Sunday on the 9th. And according to witnesses, Sarah Moore coordinated the exercises. So this was the mom who was unfortunately murdered. All the Moore children, as well as the Stillinger girls, participated. And then Josiah Moore, the father, sat in on the congregation. The program itself ended at 9:30. So the family, along with the Stillinger sisters, walked home from the church, getting home sometime between 9:45 and 10 p.m. The following morning, at approximately 5 a.m., Mary Peckham, who lived next door to the Moores, stepped outside in her yard to start hanging laundry. At around 7, she realized that not only had the Moors not been outside, nor the chores began, but that the house itself seemed what she described as unusually still. So between 7 and 8 a.m., she approached the house and knocked on the door, but she received no response. She then began to try to open the door, only to find it was locked from the inside. So after letting out the Morse chickens, what a good neighbor, Mary called Josiah's brother Ross, setting in place what's described as one of the most mismanaged murder investigations to ever be undertaken.
Oh, no.
So the crime itself. So based on her testimony and those who saw everyone at the Children's Day exercise, it is believed that sometime between midnight and 5 a.m., the murderer entered the home of J.B. Moore and brutally murdered everyone who was inside the house with an axe. Oh. Upon arriving at the home of his brother, Ross looked from the bedroom window and tried to see, and then knocked on the door and shouted, just basically trying to get someone's attention in the house.
Yeah.
When that obviously didn't work, he found his keys and found that one did open the door. And Mrs. Peckham followed him onto the porch like the neighbor. She didn't enter the parlor. Ross went no farther than the room of the parlor. When he opened the bedroom door, he saw that there were 2 bodies were on the bed and there were dark stains on their bedclothes. He returned immediately to the porch and told Mrs. Peckham, the neighbor, to call the sheriff. The 2 bodies in the room downstairs were Lena Stillinger, age 12, and her sister Ina, age 8, who were there as guests.
Oh,
I know.
It's horrible.
So the remaining members of the family were found in the upstairs bedrooms by the city marshal Hank Horton, who then got there shortly after. Everyone in the house had been brutally murdered as their skulls were crushed as they slept. And again, Josiah Moore, who was 43, Sarah Montgomery, his wife, Moore, was 39, Herman Moore, his son, was 11, Catherine Moore was 9, Boyd Moore was 7, and Paul Moore was 5. So as mentioned, the crime scene was not well managed, and the law enforcement basically lost control of it quickly as neighbors and curious onlookers converged on the house.
I remember. Okay, this story is familiar now because I remember. I don't know where I heard of this, but they had mentioned how people would just come into the house to come and see, and they would take things and.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it. Why? What is there that you would want to see? These are people that you knew and loved.
Honestly, so on that vein, they basically estimate up to 100 people went and gallivanted through the house before the National Guard arrived at around noon. God. So remember, this is around 9 a.m., 8 a.m. So 3 hours passed of people just venturing through. God only knows who else was there and if the murderer came back. And they basically had to cordon off the area and secure the home because the sheriff's office botched it so badly. So the only known facts of the crime scene are as follows. They know that 8 people were bludgeoned to death. They presume it was an axe that was left at the crime scene, and it appeared everyone had been asleep at the time of the murders, except for the one girl who tried to fight her attacker off. The doctors estimate the time of death was somewhere a little bit after midnight. Curtains were drawn over all the windows in the house except for 2, which didn't have curtains. And those windows were actually covered with clothing belonging to the Moors.
Oh, wow.
All of the victims' faces were covered with their bedclothes after they were killed. A kerosene lamp was found at the foot of the bed of Josiah and Sarah. The chimney was off and the wick had been turned back. The chimney was found under the dresser. I don't understand what that means.
Yeah. It's what?
Yeah. Maybe the chimney for the lamp itself. So the thing that goes on top of the lamp.
Oh, okay.
How the fuck do you put a chimney? Anyways, we're dumb. A similar lamp was found at the foot of the bed of the Stillinger girls, and the chimney was also off.
Okay.
The axe was found in the room occupied by the Stillinger girls. It was bloody, but an attempt had been made to wipe it off, and the axe did belong to Josiah Moore, who was the father who was murdered. Mm-hmm. The ceilings in the parents' bedroom and in the children's room showed gouge marks, which they assumed were made by the upswing of the axe.
Yeah.
A piece of a keychain was found on the floor in the downstairs bedroom. They did discover as well a pan of bloody water at the kitchen table and a plate of uneaten food. Who stops to, like, I hope that wasn't the murderer because that's gross.
Yeah.
All the doors were locked, which to me is like, did they leave through a window or did they like lock the door behind them? Right?
I would go with lock the door behind them.
Can you? Oh yeah, that's right. I don't know how the locks work. I was thinking like bolts.
Yeah, it depends on, or if they have a key or if they found a key.
Oh, that's
and
true.
then took it with them.
This is why I couldn't be a detective. I wouldn't solve it. I would just be like, they knew them. Anyways, the bodies of Lena and Ina were found in the downstairs bedroom off the parlor. Ina was sleeping closest to the wall with Lena on her right side, and there was a gray coat over her face. Lena, according to the inquest testimony of Dr. F.S. Williams, who was like one of the doctors attending, she was laid as though she had kicked out one foot of her bed sideways with one hand up under the pillow on her right side. Half sideways, not clear over, but just by a little. Apparently, she'd been stuck in the head and squirmed down right into the bed, perhaps 1/3 of the way. Also, the coroner reported there was a slab of bacon on the floor of the downstairs bedroom lying near the axe, and it weighed about 2 pounds, which is random. Lindquist also noticed that one of Sarah's shoes, the mom's shoes, which he found on Josiah's side of the bed, the shoe was found on its side. However, it had blood inside it as well as under it, which is weird to me. He assumed that the shoe had been upright when Josiah was first struck and that blood ran off the bed into the shoe, and that the killer later returned to the bed to inflict additional blows and subsequently knock the shoe over.
Yeah.
They also believe that, like, if these crimes had happened today, it would have been solved very easily. But at the time of the murder, like, between how, like, mismanaged the crime scene was, and then because, like, back then fingerprinting was like a brand new venture, and at that point, like, it was 1912, DNA testing was unimaginable. Like,
Yeah.
it would never have thought like it would be it. And a local druggist, like someone who worked at a pharmacist, but was smart enough to enter the crime scene, and he was like, oh, like, I'll come with my camera to, like, document things. Hell, they fucking threw him out.
Oh, you leave everybody else in, but not him? Like, come on.
I know. Like, honestly. So here are some let's talk about the inquest itself first. So on June 11th, the county coroner, Dr. Lindquist, arrived at the scene of the crime. June 10th. So yeah, after the discovery of the murders. And then after viewing the crime scene himself, he later met with John Henry, aka Hank Horton, who was a night watchman, and Sheriff Orrin Jackson, and basically to, like, go over all the evidence and info they had gone over and collected. He called the members of the coroner's jury later in the afternoon, but it was several hours before they actually entered the home itself to view the bodies, and after 10 p.m. before he and the county attorney finally gave anyone permission to, like, actually remove the bodies. The fire station had been set up as a temporary morgue for this purpose, and it was close to 2 a.m. before all the bodies were actually transported. On June 11th itself, the coroner's jury did then convene for the inquest, and 14 witnesses were called to testify. So the first witness was Mary Peckham. So she was the next door neighbor, and she was as mentioned, she was the first person to notice that, like, something was really wrong. So she testified that she did live next door to the family and had not seen them, before they left for church that Sunday evening. She went to bed at around 8 p.m. and didn't see the family return because she was asleep. She went on to say she did not hear any noises from that house during the night. And then she explained that she had, like, she'd been out between 5 and 6 a.m. hanging her laundry, and then it was around 7 that, like, it was unusual for their house to be as still as it was. Which, like, makes sense if you have a bunch of kids. Like, little kids get up to the crack of dawn. So after, as she mentioned earlier, like after trying to like wake up the family, she let their chickens out and checked on their other livestock, and then seeing that the livestock were still tied, she then called the brother-in-law to see like whether anything had happened in the family that would have like kind of like explained why they were gone. And then of course, after speaking to her, like the brother's wife, Ross's wife, Jessie, she then saw Ed Sully, one of Josiah's employees, go into the barn to feed the horses. And then Josiah's brother Ross arrived to open the door. She then explained that she stayed on the porch while Ross went inside and looked around. And then after seeing 2 bodies and bloodstained sheets, Ross immediately came back to the porch where she was waiting and was like, oh my God, something awful's happened. Please call the sheriff. She also testified that the doors had been locked with a key and that no key was in the lock on the inside of the door. So the second witness is Ed Sully. So Ed is the one who she saw arrive to feed like the livestock. So Ed was employed by Josiah at his implement dealership, and Ed just came to tend to the animals. So he opened the store and received a phone call from Ross, Josiah's brother, seemingly after he would have been contacted by the neighbor. So Ross was like, hey, like, do you know where Josiah is? And then Josiah, he was like, no, like I haven't seen him. He then also received a call from Mary Peckham, the neighbor, to see if Josiah was at the store, and she told him that the livestock needed tending. He left the store and went to the house where he fed the horses, and then after he got back to the store, he got another call telling him to bring the marshal to the house quickly, seemingly after like the bodies were discovered. So according to his testimony, the brother and the neighbor had entered the house before he returned with the marshal, where they arrived, all re-entered together, and then they saw blood on the bed in the downstairs bedroom. He then left the house. While waiting outside the home, he was met by someone named by Harry Moore. And according to him, when Marshal Horton came out of the house, his comment was that there is somebody dead, or they have been killed in every bed. And at the time the house was locked, the marshal was left to call the coroner and the sheriff, and he then returned to the store to call the John Deere people in Omaha to alert them of the news. He did return to the house after making the call to Omaha, but he did not go back in the home. When he was asked if there were any like potential enemies of Mr. Moore, he admitted that that Josiah had mentioned a brother-in-law that could have been a threat. And he's quoted saying, he says, I got a brother-in-law that don't like me, said he would get even with me sometime. So the brother-in-law that he would have been referring to was Sam Moyer. He denied having any other information regarding as to like anyone else who would want to murder the family.
Okay.
Yeah, like I won't go through all the witness testimonies because like there's literally a million of them. But like everyone kind of points towards a few different suspects.
Okay. So more than just Sam.
Yeah, so there's a few people who they think could have done it. There was like no shortage basically of suspects. So there's a man named William Blackie Mansfield, and they basically thought he was paid by Frank Jones to commit the Moore murders, which is bizarre. Who
was there like a reason why they wanted them then?
Well, so Josiah Moore worked for Frank Jones at the Jones store, and then he worked there for 9 years until he left to make his own company in 1908.
Okay.
This made Jones so mad that Moore had left his employ and actually managed to take the very lucrative John Deere franchise with him. So John Deere, is, as you might know, that like builds machines that help maintain farms, like land, and agriculture. There's also a rumor that Moore had an affair with Jones's daughter, like Donna, which would have also like contributed to the animosity. Yeah. And Detective Wilson of the Burns Detective Agency openly accused Frank Jones and his son of hiring William Mansfield to kill Joe Moore. But neither him nor his son-in-law were ever arrested, and they both, like, to their graves, denied any connection to the murders.
Okay.
So William, aka Blackie Mansfield, they suspect could have been paid to kill him.
Okay.
But he managed to convince a grand jury to open an investigation in 1916. Or sorry, Wilkerson managed to convince a grand jury to open an investigation in 1916.
Mm-hmm.
And Mansfield was arrested and brought to Montgomery County from Kansas City. Payroll records, however, basically gave him an alibi that placed him in Illinois at the time of the Villisca murders. So he was then released for lack of evidence and then won a lawsuit he brought against Wilkerson and was awarded $2,225, which would be a lot more in money today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wilkerson believed that the pressure from Jones resulted not only in Mansfield's release, but also in the subsequent arrest and trial of a Reverend Kelly.
Oh.
So another prime suspect in the murders was Reverend George Kelly, who was a traveling preacher. So he and his wife settled in Macedonia, Iowa in 1912 after a bunch of years of preaching throughout the Midwest. In 1917, so 5 years later, he was arrested and charged with one of the victims of the Villisca Axe murders. He was invited to attend the Children's Day exercises the day before at that Presbyterian church, and his presence in Villisca on the night of the murders and his subsequent departure in the early morning hours of June 10th made him like a prime suspect.
Okay.
So he ended up confessing, but it's suspected his confession was given under duress and torture.
Okay.
And it's described as a mockery of law enforcement practices at the time, and then was withdrawn before his trial even began. His first trial resulted in a hung jury, and he was finally acquitted by the second trial. According to information presented by Kelly and Tammy Rendell, Kelly moved to Kansas City, Connecticut, and finally New York City. But the remaining years of his life and his resting place are a mystery. It's also suspected. I mean, I'm not going to go through every single suspect because there's a ton, and I think that this is something that people would definitely find interesting enough to read up on. But there's a man named Henry Lee Moore who was a serial killer and was actively at work during the time of the murders. So there was a strong possibility that a serial killer was actually at work, and the Wilkerson's case against Mansfield was actually suggested the same. Henry Moore was actually convicted of the murders of his mother and his maternal grandfather in Columbia, Missouri, just months after the murders in Villisca. And the Moore families were killed just as brutally as this Moore and the same Moors in Villisca were killed the same way. So with an axe in both cases.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And it was close?
Close enough. He killed them in Missouri, which is also the Midwest states.
Okay.
And then to go on to Iowa would not be a big jump. Definitely you would get there within a period of months if you were crossing the United States, killing people, right?
Yeah.
So they definitely think he was an option there. And of course, it's now thought that this house is very haunted.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
Because of the brutal events that took place there. And you can go there for tours now. It has been renovated since, but they've tried to keep it very true to the
period.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you can go there if you want to go for a tour. I mean, it's a bit morbid. But I
don't like those.
Yeah, I know.
What are you? Yeah. You're not. It's almost like you're celebrating it.
Yeah, I find that's the same thing with people who go for tours of the, I can't remember the name of the house, the girl axe murderer. Yeah, Lizzie Borden, the Borden house.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do overnight tours and stuff. I don't know. I think it's exploitative.
Yeah. It's not necessary. You can do ghost tours, but ghost tours are the ones I've done. You add one spot, but it's not focusing on a tragedy.
Yeah.
It's more focusing on the ghost stories and the legends and that kind of stuff. It's not. I don't like the ones where like, these people have been murdered here. Come and see. Like, no, it's gross.
Well, speaking of exploitative, Zach Baggins describes this as the most intense case of good versus evil I've ever come across.
Of course.
Zach Baggins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's tons of like videos about this on YouTube. Bailey Sarian has a really good video about it. It's it was 108 years ago, right? So, or 109
I like
now.
wonder. I have a hard time thinking, because like, if you're going after one person, you kill that one person. But to kill like the children and the friends, like that's either, or you had a vendetta against the whole family.
100%, and that's where like, that's where like I actually really like think that serial killer makes sense.
Mm-hmm. The next one, isn't he the one though that was like a huge liar? Let me see. Let me go.
Maybe.
Because there's one serial killer where they arrested him and he's like, oh, I've killed 100 of people, and they like caught him. Oh, I'm thinking of Henry Lee Lucas.
Yeah, no, this is Henry Moore.
Okay. Yeah, so Henry Lee Lucas, they did interviews with him, and he claimed like hundreds of murders, but there's points where like to test him, and I saw a documentary, I think it was on Netflix, where they were like, oh, like, did you kill so and so? And it was like in China, and he's like, yeah, I did it too. And he's like, how did you go there? And he's like, oh, I drove. And that's where they were like, no. Can't drive from the States to China.
Yeah, honestly.
But yeah, he'd be someone that would be interesting to talk about. He's a big liar. Like, still killed some people, but not the amount that he claimed.
What a sociopathic thing to do. I mean, it makes sense if you're a serial killer. Like, lying is like whatever at that point, right? Like, but yeah. And like, I feel bad because like at this point, we're never gonna know who did it.
Mm-mm.
So like their killer will never like likely have been brought to justice unless it was that guy that was a serial killer.
Yeah, which would make sense, especially to kill the kids.
Yeah, you've got to be like, I mean, you got to be pretty fucked up to kill another human, but you have to be like especially fucked up to like kill a kid. You know,
a huge, like the whole family.
Yeah, like
because you got to vendetta against the father. Like you would wait for either that person to be alone, or you would kill the couple. Like. You wouldn't do it when like the house is completely full.
Yeah.
To me, it would make sense. Not speaking of experience.
I was gonna say, I don't know that you and I have like at least a thought process, hopefully. Hopefully.
No.
But yeah, gross.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was a bummer, but okay.
Yeah. I mean, true crime isn't really a jovial thing.
No. It was a creepy episode, though.
That's right. Well, guys, thanks for vibing with us. Remember to like and subscribe.
This is our last episode of our marathon.
Yeah, not ever. I did scare Stephanie a little bit. But yeah. Perfect timing. I think my various flat whites are finally wearing off.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Thanks, guys. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Creepy Vibes Only. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook by searching for Creepy Vibes Only Podcast. We absolutely appreciate and love your support, and you can do so by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribing to the show wherever you listen. If you wish to get in touch with us, you can send us an email at cvopodcast@gmail.com or leave us a voice message on our podcast's page on Anchor. We will talk to you in 2 weeks. Bye.